A special Friday edition of the online dinner party. Hope everybody's doing all right. I know here in Durham, North Carolina, we've been facing a heat wave that has fortunately taken a break. It looks like today the temperatures have been in the 80s and they might even be some lows in the 60s when I go to work on Sunday. And if I have to go to work at the Cultural Arts Center on Saturday, it might be some lows in the 60s on that day as well. But we've been dealing with 90s and 100s and all along those lines, but definitely it has been some hot weather here in Durham, North Carolina, and folks have been dealing with that sweltering heat. Part of the reason that on Wednesday I went and got the old haircut because I was beginning to look a little bit like Wolfman Jack, so I decided I'd go trim it down since that is usually a better way to be in the dead of the heat of summer and all along those lines. And of course, my dad and his lady love have got a party coming up in 3 weeks. So I told the barber I might see him again in another 2 or 3 weeks to get ready for that party. That'll be on the 23rd, as they'll be celebrating two milestone birthdays. We actually already did one of the parties for dad when he turned 85 in June, and his lady love turned 80. I believe that was the end of May. But they're going to have a party in the toward the latter part of this month, and all in that way. So I believe it's the 23rd, which will be on a Saturday, and all in that kind of space. So it should be a fun party. I've already seen the RSVP list, and a lot of folks will be attending as they turn those milestone years of 85 for dad and 80 for his long time lady love, and all along those lines. So definitely between the heat and those kind of things, that's what's been going on in this neck of the woods. We have had a couple of things at the Hayti Heritage Center where I work at. I know that there was a film that was talking about the evangelical movement and its impact on some of the things with Black Lives Matter and all along those lines, in some ways that they had either worked together or in some cases not worked together, and all in that space. So that was definitely an interesting film that was shown not this past Tuesday, but the Tuesday before. And then, of course, they've got African Dance for Women on Monday and a lot of African drumming. And then on Sunday, there is a church that meets in the building. They actually meet in one of the classrooms. It is a small church and everything like that, even though the Hayti is an old converted AME church that used to have regular congregation meetings when they first were formed back in 1869. And then eventually it became the building that it is now, which is a historical registered building in 1891. And it was created by freed slaves, first as a brush arbor, which means that they were having church services even though they didn't have the building, and all along those lines, meaning that they were having services on the outside in the property that they owned. And I can only imagine what that would have been like on a hot day and all in that space. But I've got an amazing guest that's going to be talking about math and math education. Ironically, went to school myself for journalism and all along those lines, but I definitely felt I was always better in English than math. But way back in the Ice Ages, when they was given the SAT and all in that way, I took the SAT, and if I remember correctly, I think I got like a 1050, which was a decent score even at that time and everything. But ironically, I got the 550 in math, even though I consider myself more of an English person than a math person, and all along those lines. So I think it was a 550 in math and a 500 in English, and all in that kind of way. So I think it was a 1050 total score, if I remember correctly. But like I said, that was way back some 40 odd years ago, and all in that space. But that is what I recall, and all in that kind of way. But when I went to college, I learned that math wasn't always my forte, because there were a couple of subjects that I had as my Achilles heel and all in that space. And one of them was foreign language. So I actually had to come back to North Carolina and get a course. I think it was in French. I don't think it was Spanish and everything like that, even though with the Spanish society and the influx of the Spanish community, I probably should have gotten it in Spanish and everything like that. But the other thing that was a difficult topic for me, so I think I got that at UNC as well, was stats. And we know that stats is a form of math and all along those lines. So stats was definitely one that was not a fun course for me. So I had to come and get that from UNC instead of the university that I was attending, which was Marquette University, and all along those lines. So I can understand when Susie is talking about that folks have a fear of math and all along those lines. Ironically, I was talking to my mom, and we were talking about my nephews, her grandkids, and all along those lines. Since I don't have any kids of my own, but my brother has two. As a matter of fact, this month, the month of August, they will be turning 17 and 16 respectively. And the 16-year-old did not do that well in the driver's test, even though his older brother apparently did do quite well. But we were thinking that maybe he thought that he just was a super smart kid and would get it through the process of osmosis. And mom was telling me that even when she was studying, she does remember lying the book underneath the pillow and trying to do it through osmosis. So maybe that osmosis method actually works and everything like that, because she definitely considers herself a smart cookie, and she is a smart cookie and all in that kind of way. But it was interesting that she brought up this idea of osmosis, because I know that people, including kids, have had this idea, hey, you just lay on the book and maybe you can just get that knowledge that way and everything like that. So I don't know whether that ever worked for you, Susie, and whether you were always a mathematical prodigy, or how that came about, your love of math and your feelings for math. Like I said, even I went to high school in a small high school in rural North Carolina, and I remember taking a physics course, and I remember taking a couple of math courses and everything, calculus and other things that might have been more difficult because I was on the college track. Some people were on the college track, some people were on the vocational track, some people, even though it wasn't an official track, were on the military track, and of course some people were on the criminal track, and that definitely wasn't an official track as well. But there were definitely two known tracks for the vocational track, meaning that you were trying to go to work, say to be a plumber or a mechanic or a bricklayer or something like that. And there were those of us that wanted to go to college and everything like that. And one of the things I remember about one of the physics courses was there was a young lady, I think she was from Laos, that was teaching us physics, and she put down this very intricate mathematical equation and all along those lines. And then we were all sitting there diligently writing our notes and everything like that. And at some point in the course, in the middle of the putting the formula down, because I think she was a recent graduate, probably of one of our fine universities like North Carolina State or UNC or East Carolina. But in the middle of writing down this formula on the blackboard, even though I think it was a whiteboard that she was writing on and everything along those lines, she turned around and looked at us. And there weren't that many that were taking physics. Like I said, it was a small rural town and everything. And and I don't want to imitate a person's accent and everything, but in a Laotian accent and everything, she turned around, looked at us, and then she's like, I think this formula is right, but I'm not 100% sure. So we were all there going like, wait a minute, you're the teacher. If you don't know, we got a serious problem. Yeah. So tell me, how did you get involved in mathematics, and what got you into this whole notion and everything like that?
Oh, okay. So, Mark, it's just such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. So here's my math story.
Okay.
So I'm in high school, and I really am intrigued by math. I want to learn it, but I also want to be smart. And what do we say about people that are good at math? Don't we say, "Oh, you're good at math, you must be smart."
Right.
So I was looking at these my friends, and they were in these honors math classes, and I was like, I want to be smart. I want to be good at math, but I wasn't good at math. So I asked my high school teacher if he would tutor me. And when I was a senior in high school, I signed up to take 3 math classes, and I was going to be fine. He was going to tutor me. And the idea was that I was going to go on to college and be a math major. So here we are, he's tutoring me, and I'm just pestering him with question after question. And pretty soon he just throws up his hands and he says, "You will never amount to anything in math. You're just so bad at this. Like, just give it up."
Well, but apparently he did not know what he was talking about, because you have had 1 million students that you've reached, and you've had 20 books that you've authored and everything like that. So apparently you found a way to get people motivated into math, because I do know that sometimes people are intimidated by math. One of the things that I think I mentioned to you and everything was the network Pod TV was created because Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun, the two founders, one was a pension attorney and is still a pension attorney and everything like that. And the other one was an engineer by trade, but they were frustrated that a lot of things that should be common sense knowledge are not taught, like fiscal literacy and how to deal balancing of the checkbooks and things along those lines. So that is one of the reasons that they created the network, is because they wanted to see things like this covered by the general media, as well as, and they had done some work with PBS, and they had done some work with IBM and everything like that, the big corporate company. But they were frustrated that they weren't seeing enough of these kind of things being addressed by either media or culture in general.
Right, right. And so I agree. We have a long way to go with math education, and it's exactly what you said. There's so many adults that have had bad experiences,
Mhm.
and they've developed math anxiety. So what I've done is to create a program called Math and Movement. And
Right.
this is a program that allows kids to be physically active while they're learning. And the benefit of it is that it's so enjoyable. They have so much fun. They think it's a fun game. They want to keep playing the game, practicing their math. And pretty soon they've just mastered so many foundational math concepts. And there's a large visual with it. And I have some pictures, and I can share some pictures for your audience if you think would be helpful.
I think that would be very helpful. Again, if you want to go through the process and everything like that, I know the audience would love to know how this whole process works, because I agree with you that a lot of times people don't understand the importance of gamification along those lines and everything like that. So unfortunately, they don't see the common way that a lot of math skills can translate even to your day-to-day life and everything like that. Because I know that one of the things that I have become good at, I used to use Mint, but now I'm using Rocket Money, because I know that even in my own life, I am not always the best at financial management and everything like that. So it's always good to have tools that can help you see where the money is going and where the money's not going, and how to improve it. But a lot of times I've even seen people, because I live not that too far from two gas stations, and sometimes people will be trying to figure out how to make a purchase. It might be a simple purchase like some food, or it might even be something more complex like a lottery ticket, but they're trying to figure out how to make sure that they have the right amount of change, or the right correct change and everything like that, which is the very basic mathematical skill that we should learn at a very young age. But sometimes you're still struggling with it even in your way adult years.
You're absolutely right, and it really starts at a foundational level in kindergarten, first grade, these early grades, helping students to develop number sense, and really feel comfortable with the math. If a student has not learned multiplication in third grade, they're already behind.
Yeah.
And so this is something parents can do to really help their kids, is make sure that if your child is third grade, or has finished third grade, or above that, make sure they're solid with multiplication, because so many math concepts use multiplication as a foundational skills. And if you haven't learned it, it's just really challenging for
Yeah.
for the kiddos.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking that a lot of times it could be a simple math question that sometimes people don't know, because they are, as you said, math challenged, or they're not thinking about the math in that sense and everything. I know that every morning or during the day, a lot of times you'll look outside and you'll see the clouds, and somebody may ask you, well, how many clouds did you see? And everything like that. But you may have counted it in your head, but because it wasn't something that you were concentrated on and everything like that, a lot of times you'll forget and not have the sense of what you had seen, even though you might have counted them at the time you were looking at them. And the same with butterflies, and the same with some of the things that are out there in Mother Nature and everything like that. I know that I recently was getting a ride from a friend of mine, because I get around by mass transit usually, but they were giving me a lift, and they were about ready to run over a rabbit and everything like that. And I was like, no, don't hit the rabbit and everything. But it was only one rabbit, If it had been two or three, I might have been going like, I don't know, was that three rabbits or was that four rabbits and everything like that. But a lot of times, even though they are the wonders of nature, we are not paying as much attention as we probably should, and all in that space. But if you got simple mathematical skills, you can use that to count how many you saw, whether it was five butterflies
Right,
or four
right,
rabbits.
right. Absolutely, absolutely. Great.
A lot of times people are thinking about that. I'd love to see the presentation and to hear more about the presentation. So if you want to pull that up, just so people can get a better idea of the importance of math and everything like that. Just really quickly, how soon do you think people should be learning these skills? Because one of the things, and I've talked about it on this show before, when my nephews, who I mentioned earlier, who are now about to be 17 and 16 in this month, when they were very young, Dad would go around and he'd show them leaves. He might even be counting the amount of leaves and everything like that. And he would show them other things in nature. And I'm sure that some of his, I won't say friends, because also his friends are inquisitive like my dad is and everything like that. But some of his acquaintances might have been going like, why is he showing those 1 and 2 year olds these
Mhm.
items and these kind of things? Because there has been this philosophy. I'm not saying it's a correct philosophy that you're not supposed to really be getting your kids to learn things until they are older and can understand what they are learning. But then I've also heard people say that, like using music, because I've got a background to some degree in music, because my parents had a radio station when I was a teenager, that even young women that are pregnant should be playing music for their
Mhm.
young people, because that music might resonate with them after they come out of the womb and everything like that. So just wondering, should we be like reciting numbers to the kids while the kids are in the womb and everything, and maybe even doing mathematical nursery rhymes while the kids are in the womb of the young mothers?
Absolutely. Starting when babies are in utero, counting to them, counting things, talking to them. And we know that reading to students or to our children is really important. It's equally important to do math with them, and it starts with counting. And once a student is really good with counting, you can work on addition and subtraction. But at the foundational level, it all goes back to counting forwards, counting backwards. And if you're doing dishes, and you have a baby in utero, or even a 1 year old sitting right there, always count. You maybe put Cheerios on their tray, count them out, show them to count. And the more counting you do with the students, the faster they're going to learn that information. Little babies are like sponges, they're just absorbing everything. So the more you talk to them, that's one of the most important things you can do, either when a child is in utero or when they're young, is to talk with them. Talk with them about everything. Tell them everything you're doing. I'm going to the cupboard to pull out a cup. Here is the cup. Oh, I have 3 cups. 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. That repetition, it sounds kind of silly, but the children are absorbing that information, and they're so much farther along if the parent speaks to them. Just like what you were saying, count the leaves on the trees, count the ducks in the water. Just count everything at a very young age, and that's an um, excellent for helping the students to develop the number sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. Because I remember even as a youngster myself, one of the first impressions of counting that I recall was that there's this notion that if you can see the trunk of a tree, like after the tree has been cut and everything, that if you count the rings, that is actually how old the tree is and
Right.
everything. And that is one of the first things that I remember about one of my early counting experiences, is you would go there and you'd see, and then maybe the tree had 30 rings. So it was a 30-year-old tree or something like that.
Right.
In some cases,
Right.
maybe 50 or 60 rings or something like that in that space. But I was just wondering, do you sometimes feel, because you're in this space and you've been reaching so many youth and everything, that the kind of computerization of the world. Oh, she disappeared on me. Hopefully she'll come back and all along those lines, but I'll be waiting for her to come back and make her presentation and all along those lines. But I do want to know about the computerization of the world and that's impacting us as well. I think Susie is trying to come back in. Yeah, there we go. Oh, she's back. She made it back. But Susie, I just wonder, sometimes I do hear people that are frustrated by the Google nature of the world and everything like that. Because sometimes, if whether it's Chat GPT or Google, if you want to know what 5 times 5 is, the lazy kids of the world would just go and ask Google or one of the other platforms that are out there that are educational. Whereas I remember growing up, and I know that PBS is in trouble and because of some cuts in funding and all along those lines. But I do remember, I think it was Count Dracula or something like that. That was on Sesame Street, and there were some other characters that would actually be doing counting, and even some of the things around congressional bills, like I'm just a bill and things like that. But I wonder, are we losing some of that sense because we don't have as many of those kind of programs, the educational programs that we used to have on TV? Because, like I said, I watched some old reruns on some of the Icon and some of the other networks, and I don't see enough of the old PBS Zoom type shows where there would be some of that counting that existed. And like I said, it might have been Count Dracula, but I know it was a Count character that was on Sesame Street.
I think, the old fashioned way before television was that parents would do this with their children, and that's really the best way. Just like you were describing how your brother did it, just
Right.
counting everything, reading. I mean, that's really the best way. And in terms of Google and chat, I mean, those are great resources for us. We as a society will go farther because of all of the technology, but it doesn't take away from, as parents, we are the first educator, and we really need to read to our children, do math, count with them, sing songs, involve them with music, sing to them. All of that, all of these early learning experiences are so incredibly important. It's just sometimes think that we have the electronic babysitter, and like, oh, I'm busy, I need to do something, so I'm going to just put on the screen. That's actually dangerous for children in lots of ways. One way is with their eyes. So in our brain, we have a corpus callosum that goes between both hemispheres. And we need kids to do cross body movements, either with our arms or legs, to really strengthen the connections in the brain. And playing outside is one of the best things you can encourage your child to do, because they're running, they're doing cross body movements naturally, they're getting exercise, it's developing creativity, just less screen time. So I'm a proponent of as little screen time as possible and as much parent involvement and playing outside.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I definitely want to see your presentation and all of those things. But before we get to the presentation, and one of the things that I do recall, even with my younger brother, and there's a 7-year gap, because like I said, I'm in my early 60s, and he hit the speed limit of 55 about a year and a half ago. Yeah, so it was back in 2024 that he became 55. So he was 56. Well, he'll be 56 this year and everything like that when he becomes October rolls around and all along those lines. But I do remember that as a youngster, coming back to the reading aspect of even the math, that I was the avid reader and definitely was involved in that space. But he was an inquisitive kid and wanted to learn about cooking. And he is the master cook in our family. I mean, my dad and my mom were good cooks as well, but he's definitely a good cook in that sense and everything. But part of the reason he's a good cook, and I tease him about it, is because he knew that he couldn't reach the cookbook. So he had me reach the cookbook and all of those lines. And I would read him the instructions and he would fix the dish. So I got the reward of a good dish and he got the reward of me reading to him the instructions. And part of those instructions were mathematical instructions, because I'd be like telling him, we got to get 2 tablespoons of this or 5 tablespoons of this in order to make the dish, whatever the dish was, and everything like that. But I do remember him growing up, I think he might have been, let's say 5 or 6, but definitely a young man, crawling up onto the oven, and then I think there was a shelf that was on top that had the cookbook. He got the cookbook, and handed me the cookbook. It's like, hey, can you read this to me, and then we'll go ahead and make this dish and everything while you do this along those lines. So yeah, even for cooking, mathematics is very important as well, because a lot of times you got those various instructions, whether it's a tablespoon of this or a teaspoon of that, and all along those lines. So I'm just wondering, did your math skills translate into good cooking skills as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're talking about practical things. I mean, and why is math necessary?
Right.
You're right. Cooking. I mean, if you don't understand how to add the right ingredients to the recipe, whatever you're making is not going to taste very good.
Right.
So that's really good. I mean, also calculating the tip, knowing whether a mortgage is something you can afford
Right.
or not afford. I mean, that's a really important thing. You can go bankrupt if you don't have math skills.
Yeah, if you said that, because my mom was looking at some possible things that she was checking on, including even some insurance items and things along those lines. I think she was looking at possibly doing a car resale or something like that. So if you're going to do that, you're definitely going to have those mathematical skills. And sometimes mathematical skills even come into play when you don't expect them to come into play. Because I remember one time, not that far ago, it might have been within the last 6 months to a year, I was using one of our appliances here in the apartment that I live in, and all along those lines, and I'm in that single space. But I was sitting there, and one of the appliances was not working all that effectively, and I found out that I had overloaded the appliance. So if you overloaded, that is a form of math as well, because you got to figure out what the mathematical balance is that it can hold. And a lot of times the appliances will tell you what they can hold and everything like that. So I think I might have put in a spread or something like that it made it a little bit overloaded. So when the maintenance people came, they were like, yeah, you can't put that in there. Or you do, it has to go by itself.
Right. That you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many practical reasons why math is important. And it's just so important for people not to develop an aversion to math. And by using movement-based learning, it really can help kids love math. I mean, just really, really love it and learn it at a fast rate. It really offers a huge solution for our country, because it's just not healthy for us, for our society, to have so many people have such a dislike towards math when it's such an important skill. And just think about that with reading. We don't do that. No one will ever say, oh, I can't read, and like let everybody know and be really proud of it. Right? I mean,
no, nobody ever does that at all. And by the way, it wasn't the reselling of the car that Mom was talking about. She was actually, and this is definitely a mathematical thing, she was actually trying to figure out what she was going to do as she's getting ready to renew her car insurance. And car insurance is another thing that you have to deal with in terms of your household expenses and everything. So that's what she was doing, was looking at the reassessment of the car insurance, which you've got to do on a regular basis as well. So that's where it was. It wasn't a reseller of the car. It was actually looking at her insurance, which is something that is definitely mathematically based and everything like that.
Absolutely. I mean, and just thinking about your household budget, can you afford? What can you afford and what can you not afford? It's so important. So really the goal is to make it so that young people really enjoy math and see the value of it, and don't develop math anxiety.
Why do you think the biggest reason that kids in general and just people in particular, I mean, and adults as well, do have this aversion and this fear of math? Is it just because I find that a lot of times the more advanced the math becomes, the more complicated it becomes, then the greater the fear that becomes in everything. Like I mentioned before, when I was in school, I did take calculus and I did take physics and all along those lines, meaning grade school. I think that was high school that those courses were offered and everything. But a lot of times people are not as afraid of the primary numbers, even though there are some that have that fear. But once you get into the more complicated math, then they start having this great fear of it, particularly when you get around fractions, because a lot of people don't have an understanding of fractions and everything like that. So what is it about the mathematical fears that you think are the reasons that people have these great fears?
I think it's because there's a right and a wrong answer, and it's black and white. It's either right or it's wrong, and people don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to say, you don't want to raise your hand in class and say, I think this is the answer, and have it be wrong. Right. So that makes people really afraid. And also the other part of it is that for the most part, students don't have really solid foundational skills. And if you don't have those solid skills, it makes more advanced math concepts much harder. So for example, if you don't know multiplication and you're taking algebra and you have to factor an equation and you don't know, let's say it's like x squared plus 11x is equal to 30, and you have to say, all right, how am I going to factor this? And you're not good with multiplication. Yes, it's true. You can go to Google, you can go to chat, and they can tell you 5 times 6 is 30. But if you and your brain know that, you can just very quickly solve this problem, versus not having that number sense. It just becomes an impossible task that's frustrating and agonizing. So that's one of the reasons why I focus so much on getting students to be solid with foundational math skills, so that when they get to algebra, it can be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything, because one of the things I remember about algebra, like I said, that was a long time ago, was that the initial puzzles and the initial kind of like formulas and everything were very easy to figure out. Like, if somebody says x times 6 equals 30, it's pretty much easy to figure out that that's going to be 5, because those are like very simple numbers and everything. But then when you started getting into the ones that were more complicated, where it was multiple x factors and everything like that, then that's when the headache flag started going up and everything. Be like, x divided by x times x equals 75, you go like, wait a minute, there's three X's in there. That could be just about anything, even though there is a formula to what you're trying to figure out and everything like that. But it usually seemed to be when it was multiple formulas that weren't as simplistic, to put it in a simple term.
That's right. And if you think of math as just a game and you need to learn the rules of the game, then it really can be fun. So, and the better you are at the rules, the more fun it is.
Oh,
so, yeah. And here's something I did once. I taught third graders algebra, and it was pretty much simple algebraic equations. And I remember looking at the kids, and I would say half of them, with the first explanation, really understood it. Then another quarter of them asked a lot of questions, and then another quarter of them had to ask tons and tons of questions. So here's these third grade students raising their hand saying, I don't understand. And we're like, okay, let me explain it again. And then again, I don't understand. They just asked, these third graders asked as many times. They didn't feel bad about asking lots of questions. But let's fast forward, a ninth grade girl, let's just say, in algebra class, how many times is she going to raise her hand to say, I'm sorry, teacher, I don't understand? Like zero, right?
Yeah,
like not at all. So it's that, it's that embarrassment also if you don't understand, but which goes back to there's a right or wrong answer. But if we just think of math as a puzzle, a game, and it's just about learning the rules of the game, and the better you learn the rules, the easier it is and the more fun it is.
Now, that makes a lot of sense. I'm imagining, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the math knowledge that you teach also involves something that I know kids love a lot and adults love it as well, which is this whole notion that you can't go to any sporting event without having at least some basic knowledge of math and everything like that, because we all know that for example, in football, a touchdown is going to equal 6 points, and after the extra point, it'll be 7 if you're lucky, and everything like that. The same with a baseball; it's going to be 1 run per time that you cross the home plate and everything like that. So it's 1 + 1 that equals to the scores and everything like that. And we know that it's 4 balls to get a walk and 3 strikes to get a strikeout and everything like that. So there are simple mathematic formulas in most sports, whether that be the ones that I just named, but even basketball with its 2-point and 3-point shots, and even hockey with its 1 goal, and all along those lines. So I'm thinking that sports, which most kids are involved in, that they have to have at least a rudimentary knowledge of math just to know the scores and everything like that. I know that one of the most important persons in a game is the scorekeeper, and the scorekeeper definitely has to be knowledgeable of math and everything like that. So I just wondering, do you find yourself using a sport as a way to get kids into math?
Absolutely right, because especially boys, many boys love sports. So that's a great way to share the value of learning math, is because it just makes it easier to keep score whenever they're watching their favorite football game or basketball or baseball.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's easy to keep score and all along those lines. And of course, it's that whole notion of winning and losing. And I know a lot of times kids in general like to be on a winning side and everything like that. So if you got an idea of what it takes to be on that winning side, that can be something important as well. I know you'll get a kick out of this. This is a story from when my nephews, I said nieces, but I don't have any of those, but when my nephews were 16 and 17, well, they're that age now, but when they were much younger and first getting into soccer, I think it was the younger one, Langston. I don't think it was the older one, but they were in the middle of a soccer match. They were doing well. I think they might have been up 3-2 or something like that, but they were doing well in the match and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, my nephew went into a temper tantrum, and we couldn't figure out I was at that particular game while he was having a temper tantrum and all along those lines. And then he was like coming up to my parents, his grandparents, as well as some of the other family members. I think I might have been in that huddle as well as one of his aunts and everything like that. And he was like, y'all don't understand. I don't want to stop playing. I want to keep on going. So he's having a temper tantrum because he had to end the game and everything. It wasn't that he was losing, it was just that he didn't want to keep on playing.
Oh.
That was an amazing story. Can you tell us a little bit about this slide in this video? Because like I said, I know our audience will be quite fascinated by that and some of the things that you teach in this movement base and everything along those lines.
Oh, absolutely. So here, I'm going to pull up my screen.
Yes.
And can you see it?
Now you'll be able to see it once I pull it up. There we go.
Okay, so this is really what Math and Movement is about, and that is that we have our children, our students, they're behind in math, and they're also inactive. So the physical activity it really helps the brain to learn information at a fast rate. And when we sit kids down to learn, it's like their brain shuts down. Very little learning happens when a child is sitting still. Oh, and just think about it with yourself. If you sit still for a long time, you start to fall asleep.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is to tackle two situations. And one is that the kids are behind in math or not liking it or have math anxiety, and that kids are inactive. And the other concern that's going on right now is screen time.
Right.
So we have kids that are out, this is out of school time. They are on a screen for 7.5 hours a day. I mean, that's crazy. That's like 114 days a year. And that's just bad for the brain. So what we try to promote is that exercise is really important. It's like Miracle-Gro for the brain. And that comes from famous author, Dr. John Ratey, who wrote a book called Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain. So he coined the term that exercise is like Miracle-Gro for the brain, which is a pretty good way to like think about this, because we want our brain to learn information quickly. So if we increase our amount of exercise, that's going to increase our learning.
Yeah. Susie, before we move on, is this a problem that's pretty much just here in the West, meaning the United States and everything, or do we find some of the problems in other parts of the culture and other parts of the world, or other parts of the world doing better with their math training? Because I know that what I hear, and I don't know this for a fact, but I do have some acquaintances in these cultures, that maybe some of our Asian brothers and sisters are doing better, and some of our other people in other societies are doing better than we are in terms of understanding the importance of math. So I'm just wondering, is this more of a Western problem that we're having with not doing enough in terms of mathematical knowledge, or is it a global problem?
It's really a Western problem, because you're right. So there are kiddos in Asian cultures who are not struggling with math at all, but it's important to note that their parents hold math education so high that they insist that they practice and practice and practice. So I think it would really be good for American parents to recognize that other countries are getting way ahead of us in terms of math, because we've put more importance on sports rather than on education. And I'm not saying sports is bad. I just think that if you're going to put a lot of energy into sports for your child, also think about a lot of extras for math and reading for your child.
Yeah, it sounds to me like I heard recently that the current president just recently brought back the presidential fitness situation, where he wants people to have a certain amount of physical fitness. And I know that this has been something not just of this particular president, but past presidents for years and everything like that. And I think I heard that he was bringing this back with one of his executive orders, but it seems like you're thinking that we should have a presidential math fitness as well, or something that people that math is vital also.
It's just so important. And then I just want to talk about cross-body movements. The cross-body movements is when you cross over. That's really good for strengthening the connections in the brain. And in fact, one of the books that I wrote is called the Math and Movement Training Manual. And any of your listeners can get a copy of that book for free by going to my website, and I can share that with you. Now, here's a study that showed the link between physical activity and brain activity. So this is really cool. In the brain scan on the top, you see a group of students that were sitting quietly. Do you see how there's not that much color? Right. But in the brain scan on the bottom, that's that group of students after a 20-minute walk. The more color in the brain scan refers to more brain activity. So we have new research, brain imaging, that can show that physical activity is increasing brain activity. And when you increase the brain activity, students are going to learn at a faster rate and retain more information. So this just becomes incredibly efficient to do activities, to include movement with learning math.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
All right, so this is the solution that we have, and it's called Math and Movement, and it's a multisensory kinesthetic approach. And there's these mats that lay down on the floor, or you could do it in chalk outside, or you could paint it outside. There's lots of ways to do it. I'm just promoting making a large visual and
Right.
have the students be physically active. Have them jump on this. In this case, this is fours. They would jump and say 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. They're jumping on those big numbers and saying those numbers. And then we transfer that to multiplication. What's 4 times 4? They would make 4 hops. 4,
Right.
8, 16. And so it's powerful learning.
Wow.
It's whole body. You just use your whole body, which makes more connections in the brain.
Mhm.
And also see the focus of the child. They're
Right.
really focused with this. And it's play, it's fun, it's joyful learning. And from the child's point of view, it's a fun game. But from our point of view, it's rigorous, intentional math practice. Powerful learning, but disguised as a game. The kiddos just think it's like really, really fun.
It's interesting you say that and everything because during the pandemic, I was working with a friend of mine, IPC. He's on Instagram and everything like that, and he is a former George Lucas disciple and everything like
Oh,
that. He's also an animation person, but he had us basically doing that like a animated audio theater, and but a lot of times we would be doing various characters and everything like that. And one of the things he was saying is that some of the people were actors by trade, some of us were like myself, journalists, and I think there was one lady that was into real estate that didn't really have a background in theater. Even though I've got some friends that have done theater, and I've actually done some limited roles here and there and everything. But he was saying that we sometimes had to get out of our adulthood ways and everything like that and get into that childlike wonder because it seems a lot of times as we grow older and get caught up in the adulting of life, we forget these childlike wonderment kind of things, and that
right.
can actually impact the way that we go about our own education, even as we become older and wiser citizens and everything like that. So I was just wondering your thoughts around that because he was actually encouraging us to do some gamification, whether it was like doing some there's a name that the improv people have and all along those lines, but basically and if or something like that. It's a coined phrase that they have that they use and all along those lines. But it's basically to try to get you to get out of your whole adulthood like situation and get back to that childlike wonder, which we're seeing these kids have as they're learning these mathematical skills.
Right, absolutely. And I think the training for actors and actresses is spot on. They memorize by using their body and movement. They don't memorize sitting down because they know it's slow. They know the brain is inactive and it's going to take forever. So they get up and move to do that. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I have a video. This slide. This is important. What I'm showing right now. The student physically becoming the math manipulative. We were talking about math anxiety. So when we have this gamification and they're standing on a number and moving, and they consider this a fun game, they're not going to develop math anxiety because it's just too much fun.
Right.
They're just enjoying this process. And I think when I show this video, and this is the last thing I'll show, it really shows a child in action. So in this case, this is a young man. He is he's 5th grade. He had not learned multiplication. He was feeling kind of down about himself. We just did a 1-hour intervention and we filmed it. And I love this because you actually get to hear from a child, like step into the shoes of a child and hear how do they think about learning and what does it work for them sitting down. So I'll just show this. It's just a couple of minutes. It was a 1-hour program that we did that we just shrunk down in a couple of minutes so you could see from the beginning and end of like his attitude. Watch at the very beginning. Watch what he says about himself as a math learner, and then compare that to the end of the video.
Okay, I'm definitely looking forward to this.
I have no idea how to do my threes, and let's get to it because I'm really suck at this. All right.
You're going to jump over and land on 3 and say 3, and then jump over to 6 and say 6, and keep going all the way down to the end of the floor mat.
3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30.
3 times 5. How many hops do we make?
5.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15.
So what is the answer?
15. But yeah, that was also really fun. But this is a really interesting way to learn because after jumping, you already feel really exhilarated and like good. So by jumping this, you're just feeling good by just being able to jump. It's like kind of like recess, but it's like coming in from a recess, but you're still doing math. So,
Is it easier to learn this way?
oh yeah.
Oh wow. Wow.
Math in school. Did you
Struggling. It's kind of hard because they make you sit down and go. It's not as easy as this because this you can move around and really jump around and think. Because I feel like this is a more fun way to learn, and I think everyone should do it.
Well, that's amazing. The improvement and everything like that. And as I was watching it, I was just thinking that one of the most popular games that used to exist, and I think it's still a very popular game, particularly in urban areas, but even in definitely like I'm thinking like New York City and Chicago, but even in rural areas like where I grew up and everything, was the game of hopscotch. And basically, that's really what you were doing, is using math as almost a form of hopscotch and everything like that. And so I was thinking like this is something that more people probably should have been using all along, because as he was doing the jumping game, I'm like, yeah, this just looks like hopscotch and everything. And even here in North Carolina, another game that involves a lot of mathematical skills and everything like that. And we've got a team here that is a world champion team. As a matter of fact, I'll probably see them next month at Centerfest. I think they got picked again. They usually get picked, is the Bouncing Bulldogs. And they do a lot of double Dutch jump rope. And double Dutch jump rope, it definitely involves a lot of mathematical skills, because a lot of times they'll be switching from 1 rope to 2 ropes to 3 ropes, and the amount of twist that they do and the amount of times that they do the jumps are usually mathematically based as well. So I'm sure that the founder of that particular organization is definitely got to keep his athletes, because they're athletes in that sense, mathematically keen, so they don't know how many times to jump and in what order to keep the ropes going in the jumps. Because I know sometimes they'll be doing like 3 in a row or 4 in a row or stuff like that, and that would definitely be a mathematical skill that they would have to have.
That's right. That's right. So another example of like why math is important. So you can do double Dutch.
Right. The double Dutch. Understand the reasons of double Dutch and everything like that. What is something about math that, in terms of your math knowledge, that was a surprise time that you had to use math that you weren't expecting to use math? Like I said, we mentioned you use it in cooking, you use it in dishwashing, you use it regularly, even in regular things that we do every day, like shower and things along those lines, washing clothes and all along those lines. But what is an application of math that surprised you as one that is a mathematician?
You know, I would love to ask that question of other people too. I mean, I think just all of your listeners, like, when was a time that you were surprised that you had to use math? Because it's just so common. You know, I just think about, you're renting a car and you're looking at the bill, and all of a sudden you're like, why is this charge on there?
Right.
And it's either a valid charge or not a valid charge. But unless you take a good, careful look at the bills that you receive, you might end up spending a lot more money than you would like to spend.
Oh yeah, you definitely got to double check on that and everything. And like you said, you might wind up even at a restaurant, you might wind up spending more than you were expected to spend. I know that even sometimes I'll order out and get a DoorDash or a Grubhub order, more DoorDash than Grubhub, but I sometimes have gotten the bill and going like, that wasn't on the bill, that wasn't on that fee. So you sometimes have to double check even your folks behind you and all along those lines. Now, one of the things that I know the founders of the network have talked about is this notion that certain fields you get into for the financial gains and all along those lines, but they're not necessarily that much financial gain to being a teacher, and definitely not a mathematician. I know they teach sometimes people that want to go into archaeology and everything like that. So I just wondering, what was that for you and everything like that? So when you decided to go into math, did some of your family members go like, you can't make a living off of being in the math or everything like that? Or were they supportive of you in going into math, whether that was a significant other or whether that was a family member or anybody else? But how were they reacting to you going into the math field? Because it is not like being an athlete or a doctor or a lawyer. It's not something that's going to get you a lot of financial gains.
What I did was to become an actuary. So that was my start, and actuaries are very well compensated.
Right.
And then there are a lot of people with math, they go into finance, into like becoming a stockbroker. So there are a lot of fields where you're well compensated with math. Or let's say you want to become an engineer, and also to become a doctor, you need a lot of math to become a doctor.
Yeah, you definitely got to have, and even a lot of math to some degree to become a lawyer, because those courtroom cases are oftentimes and all along those lines. So you definitely need math skills even as a lawyer. Now, if I understand the field, and like I said, Nick is a pension attorney and everything, and I think he's hired some actuaries. If I remember correctly, y'all even it sometimes seems to be, and I hate to put it this way, almost as a morbid field, because y'all are the ones that are actually predicting how long people will live based on their habits and all along those lines and everything like that. So I just wondered, how did you cope with that? Because I'm imagining that sometimes you're going like, do I really want to tell this person that they've only got another 3 years to go in their life and everything like that?
Right, I know, and that is exactly. I was a life insurance actuary, and that's exactly the type of work that I did, was looking at the rates and the statistics and so forth. They had different rates. It was male, female, and then it was also smoker or non-smoker.
Right.
And the ones that were male smokers, their rates were the highest, and so female non-smoker, their rates were the lowest.
No, I'm sure their rates were the lowest, but I'm always fascinated. I remember when Willard Scott and some of the other weathermen would have these folks that had become centurions, had lived to be 100, 105, or whatever the extension past 100 is, and everything like that. And they would ask them, well, how did you make it to this great old age and everything? And usually it was that they had broken all the rules that you actuaries say that people are not supposed to do. So they would have been like, they drank a ton, they either womanized or did what the woman version of womanizing is, meaning that's a term like manonized, but they would basically do a lot of things along those lines, or they might have smoked 8 packs a day and all the things that you're not supposed to do and everything, and you're going like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be gone a long time ago.
Yeah, it's really true. Yeah, it's just based on statistics, but you're absolutely right that's pretty good. That's true.
Yeah, a lot of times you're sitting there going like, I don't know how you managed to do that, because you did all the things that they tell you not to do and everything like that. But definitely, it's just amazing, that kind of thing. What advice would you give to folks that are thinking that they want to get into a mathematical field, whether it's being an actuary, whether it's being maybe even a mathematician, maybe even a math teacher? Because I understand that we have a severe shortage of teachers, and I imagine there's a severe shortage of math teachers as well. So what advice would you give to get people to get into these fields that are much needed?
So actually, it's interesting advice, and it is teach other people. So as soon as you learn something, make a point of teaching other people what you've learned. So you've just learned how to multiply. So teach your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors, the strategies that you use for learning that concept. And it's also just a good service. And then that child could teach a younger child. So teach other people. So let's say you're taking algebra and you don't really know it very well. If you keep practicing it, I always say, take that one problem that you just worked really hard on and you figured out how to do, repeat it 5 times. 5 times is what you need to make the connections in your brain. And when you do that, you repeat that problem 5 times, then every time you have a similar problem, it's going to be easier. And then again, you do that 5 times, it's going to just keep getting easier and easier and easier. And then again, once you learn something, teach other people, become a peer mentor, help, just do whatever you can to help other people learn math. You'll feel good about yourself, and then you also will solidify your own skills.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm imagining there are certain careers that need math that probably don't even think of how important math is to their career and everything like that. But it is probably vital to say the firemen and the policemen of the world and everything like that. And I'm imagining that in some cases, even when they're trying to calculate what angle to get the ladder up on the burning building, right, that is probably involved some form of math as well.
It does. So I actually know a fireman, and he tells me how much math is needed on the different tests for certification that he needs to take. He just tells me about all the math that's needed to be able to do that. So it's like you can't escape math. Wherever you are, you have math. That you have to.
You definitely have math, and we're going to wrap up and everything along those lines. One of the things I get everybody to do, and this is on this network with all my shows and everything, is if you want to tell folks a note, and you've been given so much on this particular episode of positivity that you'd like to share with our global community, because that's something that I love doing with all my guests, no matter what their background is. If you want to give the ways that they can contact you, I know it was on that video, but in case they don't want to go back into the video and rewind it, if you just want to tell them how they can get in touch with you and any other things that you want to share that you haven't shared. And then I'm going to play this video from a friend of a friend that talks about the importance of teachers and the importance of counselors and coaches. So I think that it will go out with that particular video because it's fitting to what we've been talking about and all along those lines. And I think I might even ask you your thoughts about the video after it plays. I think it's about a 3-minute video and everything like that. But definitely, if you want to tell folks your thoughts on a note of positivity for the global community, because the network is global in nature, which is why I asked you the global question earlier and everything like that, as well as anything that you want to share as to how you can be contacted.
So the way I can be contacted is through my website, which is math, M-A-T-H-A-N-D, movement, MOVEMENT.com. So that's my website. And then when you go to my website, I would just be honored if you would download a copy of my book, which is called the Math and Movement Training Manual. And that has 250 math movements in it. And these are really enjoyable movements to energize the brain and also help you practice with foundational math skills. So yeah, I would love it if you would just download the copy of the book and use those activities. It's good for adults. It's good for children's. It has the cross body movements, which is, whenever you're feeling really sleepy, if you do cross body movements, it's really helpful for the brain. So yes, just go to the website, mathandmovement.com. When you go down to the bottom, if you sign up for the mailing list, you'll get an email. In there is a copy of my book.
Okay, sounds good. And your message of positivity for the global community, and it can be anything, just as long as there's a message of positivity.
Okay, so we have been doing a lot of work with positive affirmation. So here's a different twist on a positive affirmation. If you, because I talk about cross-body movements and the benefit of that, if you take a positive affirmation and put it in the I am form, like I am grateful. Right. And this is my favorite one. I am grateful. If you wake up every morning and think, what are you grateful for? It will change your life. And you focus on what you're grateful for versus maybe what you don't have. And so what my twist with it is, with cross-body movements, you would cross over one arm over and say I, and the other arm over am, and then both arms up, you would say grateful. So it looks like this. I am grateful. Right. I am grateful. I am grateful. And so it just combines everything. It's the positive affirmation, which is good for the brain. It's the cross-body movement because it helps with the brain. So that's my that's my positive message. Wake up and do I am grateful with cross body movements.
I love that and everything. I'll let you check out this gentleman who's a friend of my friend Calvin's and everything, and his thoughts on coaches and mentors. And you definitely fall in this category as well. I think you'll enjoy this, and hopefully I can ask you what you think of it afterwards, and then we'll get out of it totally after this. But check out this video and his thoughts in this poetic version.
The difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents are the champions and have to be our first life coaches and know-it-alls. Who knows how this came to be? Coaches will ask you if you know your right foot from your left, if you know yourself, if you act knowingly good or bad, if you can move and negotiate a field with style and form, if you can tackle or throw a pass, or if your last name is that of a clown, if you can let someone know on the team that you are in trouble before you cause yourself or someone else trouble. If you are ready to learn teamwork or aware that you started out today with your pants down or your sportsmanship was left on the kitchen table, if you know the social studies, the alphabets, science, music, characters, and the stats and the numbers of a great student player eligible to stay on the team, and if you know the poise of great athletic champions and their scientific attitudes that are historical or music to us now, if you have the swag of the game, the discipline, the performance, and artistic form down pat, and if you have the style of gymnastics that the sport has with life, if you have the work ethic and determination to make it all seem easy and not a game at all, if you have the knowledge of all the above, or you don't know things like this even make the difference. I think that when it comes to the importance of parents and their field and self-knowledge, wisdom, virtues, and courage, their teachings, love, respect, care that they illustrate on the field and in the grind of life with their actions and their ideas, experiences, muscle, and strategic magic and skills wrapped around us with their priceless love. For their verbs to be that make us winners in this hard and fast third century that without them, kids and adults, athletes could hardly see or do anything at all. Parents teach us the difference between playing video games and playing on the field. Parents teach us how to be champions. A huge hug should go to parents, coaches, and parent-like community people who have love on the field for you and who are champions for your life, both in and out the games.
Yep, thought that was a powerful way to end the show and everything like that, because he definitely talks about the importance of mentors, and you're definitely one of those mentors that he would probably be talking about as well and everything like that. So I thought that would be a good way to end. And there's another gentleman out of Oklahoma that does an award to the teachers out of that area, but also the people that are the unknown heroes, be that the janitors, the cafeteria workers, the guidance counselors, and folks like that. So that's what I'll totally go out with that shorter video and everything. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that particular one before I play the shorter one and get us totally on out of here.
That was absolutely powerful. That was absolutely amazing. And I'm a parent. I've got 4 daughters, and it was so encouraging to me. And I just agree with what he was saying is, the parents, this priceless love.
Right.
And also I loved what he said about the determination and the work ethic to make it look easy.
Right.
Knowing, like, to make, if something looks easy, you've put so much time in. And that goes back to what I was talking about with when you were solving your math problems, redoing the problem over and over again, because then you show someone and that person says, oh, that was easy for you.
Right.
It was just a lot of work. They put the effort in. So if everyone thinks about math and sports similarly, you can say, I know I need to practice to be good at sports, and then just say, I know I need to practice to be good at math.
Yep, I love that. So I'm going to go out with this award from the folks in Oklahoma and everything like that. But it's been a good conversation. Glad we finally were able to catch up and everything like that. And I definitely look forward to more people learning about your program and hopefully getting you to another million and all along those lines. So definitely a great conversation. And I'm glad that we were able to connect on this particular special edition, and glad that people got to hear the importance of math, because it is definitely a vital part of our lives that we sometimes ignore and don't pay as much attention to as we should, and all along those lines. So Susie, it's great having you on as a guest, and hopefully we'll get you back on some future episodes as well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. I loved talking with you about this. Thank you.
No problem at all. So we're going to go out with this particular video, and then we'll get out of here all together. But check out this award from this gentleman in Oklahoma.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't